Hey guys, this is Charles Blair, the Mad Scientist, and I am currently with my man,
Bryan.
Now, the question was asked of me the other day, what would I do? And I'm going to pose it to you too, Bryan. What would you do if you just got started in real estate investing and you had a limited budget? How would you jump out there today to generate deals, wholesaling, and so on? And that's going to be an easy question to answer because as a full-time investor, and Bryan as well, work full-time, correct?
Yeah.
So we have two different perspectives. The person who is working full-time and doing the business, as well as individual who's just doing the business. What do you think, if you were starting today, what is some of the things you would do immediately to really get up and running in real estate investing?
Well, you know me, I'm big now on sourcing my own records because of the accuracy. So that's stuff like trips to the courthouse, you know, pulling your own records, instead of buying a vacant list, actually getting out, walking for dollars, driving for dollars, or you could even do it virtually with Google Maps now. I would do stuff like that. I wouldn't really, I mean, if you really had a limited budget, I wouldn't really spend too much money on a lot of software. I mean, maybe PropStream might be it if you got the budget, but if you don't, the sold comps on Zillow are pretty good. Aside from that, I would definitely learn how to use the resources with the county websites, because you can actually look up a lot of the sold properties, doing a deed search just around the property that you're looking at. You can also find buyers that way, so that's definitely what I would do to find buyers. That's how I find buyers now. I don't really do a lot of buying lists to find buyers. I go and I look at the LLCs that bought properties through a deed search, either in the zip code or somewhere near where I have the property. I also, something that I started doing recently is actually looking at private lenders that way. You know, we had that talk, and I compiled a pretty big list of people that purchase properties with their IRAs.
Use the right lane to take the I-695
Most
East
of
ramp,
the properties that I bought
I-695
have
East.
been with private money. I haven't got a hard money loan yet. I just got pre-approved with a hard money lender now. So every deal I've ever done has been with private money and IRA money. So that's definitely a way that I would go to find money, to find buyers.
How you turn this off? Because I can direct you to where we're going at. We're going to go right down to 83.
Continue on
Jones
I-695
Falls.
East.
Okay, it's off.
Now back to what you were saying. You were saying how you are just starting to use hard money lender. You've been using private money previously.
Yeah, so I've always used private money. So you could compile a list of people who bought properties in their IRAs just, you know, from the county site. So aside from getting out, hitting the neighborhoods and hitting the zip codes to source your own leads and records, I would become really familiar with the county websites. You can use NetR online, and that will pull up every county office in every state. So I would get familiar with the website NetR online. You can YouTube it. YouTube is probably going to be your best friend for a lot of things. You probably can even go on YouTube and type in your own county website, how to deed search in whatever county that you're in. I would also do a YouTube search for that.
Well, you brought up a very good point with NetR, because that will allow the person to at least get a jump off from where they can start off at. And I agree with what Bryan is saying 100%. If you want to take that free approach, you have a lot of time, because you got to think about this. you're going to be either spending money or spending time, but the medium is a combination of both. If you're spending a lot of time, don't expect to find a deal tomorrow. In other words, don't expect to make $100,000 in one day. This is a situation where you're in this business for the long run. So if you're spending money, yes, that can build up or speed up your ability to do more things, but you still have to hustle. You still have to get out there and take action or put a team in place that's going to allow you to take action. So I agree that when you're looking at those free resources, the courthouses, the county records, and so on, they're going to be great opportunities because a lot of the list sources that we buy start off from the courthouse.
Records, yeah.
Probate,
Yeah.
foreclosure, bankruptcy, divorce, all of those start off from the courthouse.
Yeah.
So yes, you can utilize tools to build those lists, take the shortcut and utilize a system that has all those lists into it. But if you're working with a limited budget, with most new investors are, then you could actually generate the list yourself. Now, how do you determine what hours and what days? How do you stay focused when it comes to doing the business, not getting distracted, watching television and all that kind of stuff?
Well, you actually have to time block and time map. It will help if you have not a calendar on your phone, but a visual calendar hanging on the wall, old school. Because when you walk in and you see that in your workspace, and you need to have a dedicated workspace in some area where you can go and just grind it out. But when you see that calendar on the wall and you see what time slots you got marked down, it's like self-accountability. You know, so it triggers something to say, okay, well, I need to get on this and I need to do this. And I don't think it takes a whole lot of time. I think if you could commit at least a good 2 hours minimum every day, 7 days a week, or at least 5 days a week, but you got to do it more than a few days or more than a couple of days a week, and you got to find the time. And time blocking and actually committing the time to make it happen is a big part of it.
Yeah, I agree, because you just said a mouthful. One, I'm a firm believer in treating your business like a business.
Yeah.
You can't treat it like a hobby. You're not in this because you basically look at this as a game or a hobby that you want to play one day, and then the next day you don't want to play it, and then the next day
you're only going to get out of it what you put in. You're not going to make a half-ass effort and put that in and then expect it to produce some kind of miracle. You might get lucky once in a blue moon and you actually will get a golden egg, but you know, if you half-assing your way through this and you're not committing the time to do it, then that's the type of results that you're going to have.
And Bryan brings up a very good point. One of the ways I like to work with that process is use some free tools. If you don't have a calendar at home that you can write on and so on.
Piece of paper, make a calendar.
Exactly. Or you can use Google Calendar. I love that feature that's inside of the Google Suite, Google Calendar, and just mark out 2, 3, 4 hours. It got to be consecutive. You can't have 1 hour here and another hour in the afternoon. So there got to be consecutive hours that you're going to mark and say, these are the hours that I'm going to do my business. And then once you have those hours, I recommend plotting out at least 3 months of your business. I'm going to work in my business 5 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day, these days for the next 3 months. And then it's just a matter of putting in what we just got finished talking about earlier, some of the actual activities that you're going to do to generate the leads in your business. For example, I'm going to work in my business from 12 o'clock until 4, and I'll mark that down in the calendar. Now you have to put in exactly what you're going to be doing between 12 and 4. I mean, at 12 o'clock, I may go to the courthouse and pull a probate list. And then at 12:30, 1 o'clock, I may go ahead and try to skip trace that information, and so on. So that's how that actual business lineup, your business should look when it comes to you being able to do what you need to do in this business. You have to treat it like a business. So you have that calendar. You have the hours that you plan on doing what you want to do. We even talked about some of the actual resources you can go to find these different leads. Let's talk about what you want to have in place to do wholesaling. I mean, do you need a lot of money?
No. I need no money.
Well, what about, I mean, you hear people talking about, well, don't you need money to buy the deal? But you're not buying a deal as a wholesaler. What are you doing?
You're just getting it under contract and selling the paper or signing it, and you're collecting a fee for your time.
Did you hear that? All you're doing is using your paperwork to control the actual deal. Now, when you sign a contract with a seller, you have something that's called equitable title or equitable interest. With that equitable interest, just by having it under contract, you can now sell that contract for a price. That's why a lot of new investors look at wholesaling as a low entry point, but a large outcome, meaning the profit that you can make can easily be generated with a little bit of money out of pocket. But remember, I told you, you're going to either trade time for money or money for time, but one or the other is going to have to be utilized in this process. So you got the money, you don't need all this money, you got the actual process laid out, you got your paperwork. What else do you need in order to do wholesaling?
You gotta have a game plan. I advise you getting a checklist. Number one, you gotta know where to go. So I would start with back to YouTube. You go to how to find a hot zip codes with list source. That's your starting point overall.
Now you just gave them a good tool to look at. Now talk about that tool a little bit. What they can use that tool for?
Which one? List source?
Yes.
Okay. Now you can pull a list of your zip codes for free from list source. So you Google, or not Google, you probably could Google it, but you go to YouTube. Like I said, YouTube is going to be your best friend for a lot of things.
So let's talk about List Source. List Source is an actual website that you can go to, and they'll allow you to pull the list. And when you pull the list, you'll see the targeted zip codes based on sales, based on where investors are buying at, and so on. So that's what he's talking about. Going to YouTube, you can watch a video, even one of my videos, that will tell you how to use List Source. But the actual website itself is called List Source. You can basically, without paying a dime, determine exactly what zip codes investors are buying in. And now you have that little blueprint. Well, should a person start off with buying out of state, or should they start off with buying in their neighborhoods, in their areas, and zip codes where they're living at?
That depends. Me, I would say start off where you are, but right now in the age of virtual wholesaling, you really got to be committed. So if you know that you don't have at least 20 hours a week minimum to put in, then I would say don't even waste your time with virtual wholesaling. Because not only do you have to have a little bit of a budget, not a big budget, but you got to have a little bit of a budget for virtual wholesaling, because that I suggest that you get a list for. But you can do it the same way. You can get. Let's
take the next exit.
You can get familiar with the county websites, the recorder, the tax assessor, and whatever jurisdiction that you want to virtual wholesale in, and you go after the pre-foreclosures, the bankruptcies. You can honestly look up absentee owners that way as well, if you're really on that much of a tight budget right here.
Yes, but I agree with him 100%. Start off where you're at. Pick a good 3 or 4 zip codes where you're at based on sales in those zip codes, and that's where you're going to basically begin your track into the areas where you're currently investing in, or where you should be currently investing in. So you have your zip codes, you pull them from list source, and right now all we're doing is giving you free resources of how you can get started right now, free advice of how you can start wholesaling right now, and then we're going to basically touch on how you can use some of the paid stuff really to accelerate that whole process. So you've determined what hours of the day you're going to do your business. You've already determined what zip codes. We talked about using list source as a key to finding the zip codes based on sales. We also talked a little bit about your paperwork. You can get a 1-page, 2-page contract. As a matter of fact, everybody that's watching this video, if you like to get a copy of my contract that I use for wholesaling, just leave a comment below and I will give you a copy of my contract. Just leave a comment below and I'll send it to you. So you have the paperwork, you determine what zip codes you're going to be in, you've got your day laid out, and the key now is execution. How do that person, or what will that person do next once they have everything that we just mentioned already set up?
Okay, you got your zip codes. The first thing I would do, honestly, and I guess it's a matter of opinion, but if you're asking me my opinion, I would go and find buyers in those zip codes. So I would go, because like I said, you should be getting familiar with how to use your county websites, and I would pull up deed searches for recent purchases of LLCs and trusts in those zip codes. That way you know who the serious buyers are. You can even look up and see who financed them and what their closing companies are, the title companies. So you kind of killing 3 birds with 1 stone. So you find those buyers first, you get the rest of those resources, and then you go out and you hit the streets. You know, you either can get on Google Maps and do some virtual driving for dollars. You can go out there yourself, which I suggest that you do all of them, and hit up the courthouse. Or if you got a small budget, or you know, it doesn't take much. Not list source, but well, even list source, you could buy lists from list source, but we don't really recommend list source.
Yeah, but let's stay with the whole free stuff. So Bryan brought up a very good point, that we're going to go through this process with our eyes looking forward, and we can make a left up here on Greenmount when we get down to the second light. We're going to go up here on this process, the second one, with our eyes moving forward, and we're going to say, okay, we got these things already in place. Driving for dollars, great strategy, doesn't require you to have money. All you have to do is basically put gas in the car. You got to have transportation, and basically head out there and start looking at actual vacants in those neighborhoods and try to find those actual properties and so on. Okay, now we talked about putting the actual everything together. Let's talk a little bit about how people can find free resources to do the skip traces, because you already mentioned about how they can get the list, how they can create the list. What about getting those telephone numbers, getting that address and stuff? What are some of the recommendations you put out there for that?
Well, I mean, I think that you have mentioned
People search.
Mm-hmm. I think there was another one, Zaba search, Z-A-B-A search.
And then you also have PIPL, P-I-P-L.
Yeah, I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
P-I-P-L is another good one. Also, whitepages.com is another good one that you can use to try to get those telephone numbers. And some of those sites even have the social profiles for the people.
I think PIPL does.
Mm-hmm. So you remember Bryan mentioned earlier that you can use the county records to find the owner's information, their address, their name, and where they're living at right now, or the actual property information where you're looking to do the trace at right now. But once you have that information, you still have to find a telephone number so you can call them, or the email address. And those free searches, or those free sources that we just got finished mentioning, are great sources that you can use. So you've blocked out your day, and I'm going to compile everything together right now. You determine what hours and days of the week you're going to do the business. You've decided to generate your leads from county websites, from free sources like Zillow that Bryan mentioned, and so on. You already discovered what zip codes you're going to work. You've already have the free resources, tools that you can use for skip tracing, using free stuff for now. And you also have the paperwork. Well, the only thing now is to go out there and do it. Because a lot of people who get into the I want to make $1 million in real estate investing, they get discouraged when after a month go by or a month and a half go by and nothing happens. What advice would you give that person who thinks that this is going to be an easy ride doing wholesaling?
Well, you know, it's kind of what you put into it, you know, how we started out in the beginning of the conversation. If you're not going to put in a full effort, then you're not going to get full results. But if you put in a full effort, you commit the time, you do the work, you're going to get some results. Now, even still, you know, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world, but I believe that you'll get enough traction and enough small wins to where you'll stay motivated, and then you'll actually get something.
You can make a right up here. I agree with you because it's remember, like I said earlier, this is not a race. You have to learn your tools. So we gave you all these different tools and things that you can use, but you have to master them. You have to learn them. You can't just say, I have this, I'm going to spend 5 minutes learning this, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on list source, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on PIPL, I'm going to spend 5, no. You have to master your craft. And the better you get at mastering your craft, the better and sooner it's going to happen where you have that win, that closed wholesale deal. Yes, we didn't forget, you got to have a title company. That's going to be the easy part. Finding a title company is going to be the easy part in this process. But the key is you getting out there and doing it. I'm a firm believer in action plus offers equal profit. If you just put forth what we've talked about just in this little short ride over here at this property, you just put forth these action steps that Bryan and I have given you, you will be able to get a good foundation, a good start, going in the right direction to close deals. Any other advice you would